And without further ado, Tony Windsor, who needs no lengthy introduction, independent member for New England, and so often over recent times, a clarion voice of reason in all the heat and not enough light that's been emanating from Canberra.
If I could pay my respects, not just to democracy, but to the Aboriginal community that may be here tonight, and to all elders. I think what a switch in time is trying to achieve has really hit a nerve in terms of what the general community is picking up. Not only the political process, but the way in which communities and society communicates with itself now. And there's some real issues there that we probably need to address. I think the current Parliament, particularly and the combatants that are there, are sort of highlighting something that's probably a bit deeper than just competition to see who can manage the country at the next election. When I was growing up, I always thought South Africa would be a part of it. I just couldn't see how that would change. That was sort of a mental thing. I didn't agree with it. But it did change. And it didn't change because of the political process at the start. It changed because of the people started to say, this is not right. So things can change. You know, you can have that sort of switch in time where suddenly it happens. And so often, and I've seen it in politics a lot, so often you think, no, that it's not going to happen, whatever the particular issue, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, and the pressure builds and the pressure builds. And all of a sudden, whatever it is collapses in front of you, and it does happen. I've been in 2 hung parliaments. I was in a hung parliament in 1991 in New South Wales, where it was my vote that put the Liberal government into power. They had 49 votes out of 99, so they needed 50 to get there. That parliament lasted for nearly 4 years, I think. So coming into this parliament, there were 3 options in a sense. One was Tony Abbott, the other Julia Gillard, or the third one, another election. And we actually thought about that for some time. The people had voted, and Julia Gillard's quite right. We've got a parliament. The parliament doesn't necessarily have to have a majority of one particular breed or another. People mightn't like Julia Gillard, the same might apply to Tony Abbott, but we should respect them, their positions. We should have regard for the process. If we don't, if we denigrate the process over time, you erode the very thing that we should all be very proud of, and that's the democratic process. Democracy is a very fragile thing. It's not there forever. It's not there. I know I keep saying to school children, it is not there unless you turn up, get involved in it, because you can weaken these structures. And if apathy starts to reign, the people who run the place are those that turn up. So there are some very real risks, and there probably are some vested interests. It wouldn't be too uncomfortable if that in fact happened. I think the hung parliament has been quite successful in a lot of ways. It's done a number of things. I think it's slowed that process a bit, that people have got to start and consult more and negotiate more. And Julia Gillard is good at that. I don't think Tony Abbott would have been terribly good at it. Tony's more of a majority man rather than a negotiator in a difficult numbers situation. If you analyse the actual workings of this parliament away from question time, this parliament has been very successful. The committees are working much more effectively because the executive doesn't have total control. And so they have to convince the others. And I chaired the Regional Australia Committee that looked at the Murray-Darling. And I'm sure, and I'm not looking for plaudits here, but I'm sure there is a different outcome in the Murray-Darling than had there been a majority government of any form. And one of the things it has done is actually engaged community with the process. I think a lot of people are learning from this particular parliament as to how it works, how they can play a more strategic role in a sense, how they can become more involved. But we have to be vigilant and not respond, not pass on some of this, the vitriol and bile that's out there. What some of the social media has enabled people to do is be anonymous. And I think that's something that society, we've got to start and try and deal with. I've been attacked, my family have been attacked with an avalanche of threats and emails. Even today on the way down, there's a string of them there. I wasn't christened scum, but some people refer to me in that way. But most of them are anonymous, and I think some of the shock jocks and some within the media are sort of exacerbating that. We're all creatures of our past. My mother's still alive, my father died when I was 8. But in our household, there was never gossip about religion, race, or all of those things. So in a sense, even though it was a fairly sheltered life for a while, and we didn't have a lot of money, I didn't get all these messages coming across the kitchen table. And a lot of people's bias and their political views and their regard for one another comes across that kitchen table. I've got a big kitchen table out there now in the internet, and it's influencing people, young people. And if they're hearing some of this rubbish that's coming out of talkback radio under the guise of freedom of speech, what is the product that's being developed now going to be like in 10, 20, 30 years? Those who are absorbing this sort of vitriol and bile as a way of being anonymous but being able to be a player in the game.